And now this truly is on our own. We're in a boat that could sink. We have to keep it afloat. There were 6 of us sitting in a 3-man space, and we had at least another 700 miles to go if we were still on plan, which we didn't know for sure whether that was the case. Then one night, probably the 20th day or thereabouts, I saw the North Star in the sky. And I woke my dad up and said, Dougal, look. I said, that's the North Star. Now, mariners know you can only see the North Star from 5 or 6 degrees north of the equator. And we had sunk 2 degrees south of the equator. That meant that we had sailed 7 degrees to the north, or 420 miles. Proof positive that we were in the northern hemisphere and that we were on track. Suddenly the bits were coming together to realise that we might just survive this thing. On the 38th day, we'd been adrift 6.5 weeks now, and it had rained heavily that night, and we were frightened for our lives then, and we often bailed, bailing water out of the dinghy all night, and one particular night, all 3 of us bailing all night, trying to keep the dinghy afloat, and we felt pretty good in spirit, the seas were calming, and we were talking about how many miles we might make under oars and how far off we were from land. We were talking about Dougal's Kitchen. That was the cafe that we'd invented to talk about food. And it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And Dougal saw a ship. We had forgotten almost that ships could pick us up as well. Rescue was not ruled out completely. I know we'd sort of convinced ourselves that we were on we were going to survive and sail to America, but now suddenly this opportunity might present itself where we could be rescued. We quickly cleared the decks, took the sail down, and Dougal held up first one hand flare, and they didn't see that. And the ship was getting closer and closer. This time she would come within maybe a mile, which is very close at sea. And we had one last hand flare left, and Dougal, we all steadied the dinghy as he held up the flare. And the flare, there was no wind, although there was a swell, there was no wind, and the flux of the flare was dropping onto his hand, burning his hand, but he still sort of held it up, and then he threw it away. And that was the bit the Japanese helmsman saw on the fishing boat, which was now, as I say, about a mile away. And he altered course. And we watched the alteration of course, not daring to believe that he was altering course for us. We had no clothes on. Our clothes had long gone. But my mother had saved us some little rags that we were to put on for being rescued. Only my mum could think of that at a time like this, She says, I don't want you showing your bare body, so you put these on, The Tokamaru, as she was called, approached and came alongside. She was about 100 metres away, maybe a bit closer than that, actually 100 feet, say. They threw a rope out to us, a dirty, oily, smelly rope. And I grabbed hold of that rope, and I held it in my hand and looked at it and realised that this rope was our lifeline to another life, a life that we'd left behind so long ago, it seemed. It seemed like we'd always been on that raft, And I gripped it, and I didn't want them to go. I thought, I'm not going to let go of this rope, because if I do, they might just not bother picking us up, Like, I know it's a weird idea, but I grabbed hold of that. And we couldn't make it fast because there was nothing on the dinghy to make it fast to. And gradually we closed with the Tokamaroo, and we were climbing onto the deck and touching the deck of the Tokamaroo, the wooden deck. And it was like a dream unfolding, you know. Dougal said to the Japanese, he said, can you save the dinghy? You know, it wasn't for the dinghy. We didn't want the dinghy. We wanted the food that was in it. We'd saved that food. We'd saved that water. That was valuable to us. And the captain of the fishing boat said, we've got food. We've got food on this ship. And Dougal, we still didn't trust them. We wanted to save our food, and so we saved the dinghy, and we pulled the dinghy over onto the deck of the Tokamaroo. You won't believe how small that dinghy is. It's a little cockle shell. But it had been our home for 38 days.
Did you have any resentment towards your parents for taking you? No?
Never. And, you know, I thank my dad every day of my life now for what he did. Took us on this amazing adventure that just didn't turn out right, but it wasn't Dougal's fault. And although my mum and dad never forgave themselves for it, we forgave them straight away. I wrote a poem on the raft, and I finished the last line of it, or my mum did for me, on the ship on the way home. And and I remember her bursting into tears and saying that we should never have done this. And I said to her then, I said, Mum, nobody died, we've all got home. I said, you know, it wasn't the ending that we wanted, but what we did was great. And having survived that was also great. You know, it was a great feat that they'd achieved, my mum and dad together. My mum cared for us, and the twins had a little supper every night. She made sure that they had some extra food because they were so young. Life is never so joyous as when you're alive and you know you could lose it at any moment. You know, just living can be very joyous when you know that you might not be alive on the next wave. And we'd lost that. You know, now we were going to face a new life without the Lucette and without anything, actually. We were not insured. We'd lost everything when the Lucette went down. But that was the amazing story. We were 25 miles out in latitude, 100 miles out in longitude from our position with no navigational instruments whatsoever. So what happened out there on the Pacific was fairly unique. It's a family. The experience out there had changed our lives forever, because you can't have those thoughts and it not change you. And so even now, and as I say, it was 50 years ago last year, a lot of the memories are still with me about how we'd survived. And, you know, you make your own luck, I know, but we were all so lucky.
And I remember unlocking my phone and WhatsApp was on, and I kind of closed WhatsApp and clicked on the camera. And the second I clicked the film, I saw what I guess the whole world saw.